Backstage Pass. I am your host, Vince Edwards. You may know me from Sound Image Productions. I also have a couple closed roadie groups on Facebook, one called Death by Loadout and another one called the Backstage Pass. Tonight, here with me, off to my right, is my good friend and co-host, Kyle Thomas. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Another day, another dog biscuit.
Yeah, baby, we just ran it right up to the last second, didn't we?
We sure did.
We did the same thing last week. We sat down at 6:58. It's like, all right, rock and roll. Yeah, this feels like one of those, right when you just get the doors open right at that last second. Everything just going right up to the wire, which I get a little bit of a kick out of that, frankly. I like that live kind of spontaneous.
It's kind of like that yesterday, too, huh?
Yeah,
we went from,
what, they talking about the JCRC thing?
Yeah.
Tell the audience about the JCRC thing we did yesterday.
So it's the Jewish Center of, and I always forget the RC.
I think it's the Jewish Community Relations Committee, according to Michael.
Killing it. See, he's way
That's
more
why
on
he's the
top
best of us. Why do we keep him off camera?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, we're just
You
mean.
should be here, dude.
Mike, we need to talk about a little switch in position.
Good ISO him.
Yeah,
Little
ISO.
ISO.
So we went from doing like more of a setup like we do for the show here to mixing a My Heavy Memory rehearsal, which was an interesting transition.
It was a long day. What did we start at like 8:30 in the morning? We did a 10-hour with that show, which was a kind of a fundraising thing for that, something they normally do, out in the world. But we helped them do it here because of obvious reasons. And I thought it went really well. And the producer, the lovely Susie did, I think, was very happy.
Susie Drill, yeah.
Susie Drill, who's a dear friend and a wonderful woman.
Oh, she was so nice.
Yeah. She gave me a little bit of a pit viper, so she was killing it. She was on her best behavior, tolerating. All right, I was gonna say you, but you're such a sweetie pie.
See, I got the thank you and appreciation emails. No, our crew knocked it out of the park.
You guys killed it,
and she was really happy. That's all we really cared about. So
we're always going for the happy customer at the end of the game. Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. Did you see that the great? Well, let's say hi to some folks that are tuning in this evening. It's the great John Del Rio. Hello, Johnny. We love you, baby. And the wonderful and one and only. He's one of a kind. It's our Charlie Zaricki. He's the godfather of the show.
Hammer.
Yeah, he's a brother and a half. And of course, Scott Cheney. Thanks for tuning in, Scott. Hope you're doing well, my brother.
I got a book.
Charlie Zaricki sent us Jim Yakabuski's book. Now, first of all, I want to thank Jim for last week. He's such a delight and a treat to have on the show, and just a hell of a human being. But this book he's written, me and Kyle have thumbed through it so far, and we haven't read it quite yet, but it's just such a treat. We're so happy to have this, and we want to thank Charlie Zaricki for reaching out and helping us out with that.
Yeah, thanks.
It's so sweet of him. He's literally one of the best in the game, and I just can't say enough about him. I kind of fawn all over him. I just love the
Jackie
guy.
checked in.
And of course, it's the love of my life. She just finished up teaching a class of her own for her business.
Oh, nice.
She's unstoppable, man. She's like just an amazing girl.
Look at you
so
two,
lucky.
power couple.
I'm crazy in love with this woman. She's like, when it's all going right, she's the center of my world. I'll tell you what.
No, that's great, man.
So show the book to the kids.
Yeah. I think Mike got a picture up on there for us, just so he can't really zoom in too well, but.
Well,
this book, man, has been filled right off the bat. The first thing you read is like a Van Halen setup of their speaker array and everything. It's like really cool stuff right off the bat. So I can't wait to read the whole thing.
There's a little bit of gold in there. I only made it to 12 pages in with the time that it was available to me, and it's a page turner. I was like, I didn't want to stop, but I had obligations that I had to, run off to. But I'm coming back to that. I'm gonna, dissect that book.
I'm sure we'll have some questions for Jim at some point.
Yeah. Well, we're going to drag him back on the show eventually. He was just such a treat, and I feel like we didn't get to, expand on the whole of his career, and there's just so many things he gets up to, and it's just a joy.
Well, when you mix for that many people, how can you touch on everything in an hour?
I was talking to Winston Dama, who's here in the shop right now, and, he's 43 years in the business, and he's worked for, remember last time we had him on, we had 7 pages of bands.
That was awesome.
And so and so I was telling him, can he come back in June, because his resume, we barely scratched at the surface of it. And he's such a dear friend and such a sweet man, and has so many extraordinary, experiences, and he's just incredible. So we're really lucky to be surrounded by some amazing people in our business.
We sure are.
And I want to, get this out to the other folks out there, young guys coming up, and see that this is a business you can have a career in, and really make a life out of it. And Winston Dama, our guest tonight, is a great example of that. And so we're very, very lucky. I wanted to say a quick shout out to, first of all, Ignacio, Lighting God is checking in. Hello, Ignacio. Good to see you this evening. Clint Winsley, that's Crew Music Asia. He's a dear brother. He's, I hear he's going back to China to get back into the swing of things, and that should be really good for him. We want
good
that.
For you. You're getting it back in.
Yeah. He's been on down the farm too long. He needs to get back to work, and they need him out there. And then Ian Peacock, a dear friend from over across the pond, has reached out to me today, so I wanted to say hi to Ian Peacock. And of course, a quick. I wanted to touch on something really quickly. Today, I got these two groups, and as of now, they're close to 27,000 people in the groups, and they're a 24-hour concern. People all around the world are involved in these groups. And I can't look at them every fucking instant and minute of the day because that would be weird. So I check in with him when I can, and I manage him.
He checks in when he takes a poop.
That's what
real.
Facebook should be called, the stuff you do while you're in the bathroom. I mean, let's be honest. And somebody put a page, and this is like the second or third time somebody's done it, where they said, Asian folks, nothing against them, but they tend to put in weird, non-related stuff on my page. And they sneak in by one of my other administrators, which I'm going to talk to them about it. And so then I have to take them out of the page because there's no simple way to do it.
That's no fun.
Yeah, and so they'll put up this nonsense. And somebody wrote a post to me today saying, who's letting all this crap on the page? And so, of course, I wanted to reach out and rip their larynx out because, that's kind of my style. But
we can see from the desk.
Yeah, they wouldn't say that to my face if they were standing in front of me. I guarantee it because they know that wouldn't go well. So I do my best as I can, as time allows, every single day, probably to the tune of an hour or two, keeping that page tight, keeping it on message, and that's what I can do. So whoever's out there that's not good enough, there's like 10 other roadie pages. Fucking run along. Go
Guys,
check those out.
That was a really nice way for Vinny to say, "Don't pee on the beehive," because it is a beehive.
Yeah, and we're doing our best, and we're providing a service to you guys because we believe what we do, we love what we do. But I won't be smacked around or put on blast because I can't get to something fast enough. So pretty much, I'm telling you to go fuck yourself if you don't like it. And there's that. So with that said, sorry for my surly tone, but that one put me a little bit in the stratosphere with
you didn't share that with us.
Yeah, well, I sit on these things and try to sort through them and hope that the temperature goes down before I get in front of a microphone. But, I can only do what I can do. And I want to apologize to my girlfriend for cussing so much on TV. She does not like it, and she's not wrong. So I'll do better. But so it's great to see you.
You as
had
well,
a busy
brother.
week. Thank you for all that you do for us. Hi, Paul O'Doul. I did it to him again. God damn it, what is it? It's like and he's a friend. I like this. This is our friend. It's Pat O'Doul. He's the guy who got me this cool-ass lighter. I love this lighter, Pat. Seriously, you're the best. So let's just get right to it. I got a big show. We've got really a legend in the business. I can't say this enough. This guy is the history of rock and roll. It's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Let's do this thing. All right. Tonight, we are blessed. We have a rare treat for you kids. I can't tell you this enough. This is a gentleman who has been in this business he's really one of the best of us. He's in a compendium of knowledge and experience in this game. He's worked for some of the biggest bands in industry. He's worked for Bill Graham. He's came up through the rock and roll from the late 60s to this day. He'd be working right now if it wasn't for our ongoing weird situation. He works in the rock and roll game. He works in the jazz game. He works in the touring, live touring shows game. It doesn't matter. He can do it. He's done it. He runs the Great American Music Hall here in the Bay Area, one of probably the most enjoyable, fun places to gig at, and go see good shows if you're a fan. He did sound. He worked out the Altamont. Now, Altamont is an infamous situation that happened in, I guess, late 60s, early 70s. 69, where the Rolling Stones came in town and shit the bed and hired the Hells Angels. We're going to talk about that. This guy is seen and done. He's an amazing man. He's an associate professor for the California Jazz Conservatory in Berkeley. Can you please help us welcome the wonderful and amazing Lee Berkman? How you doing, Mr. Brinkman?
Doing well.
So good to see you, my friend. It's really, really a treat to have you here in the audience on the show today. How have you been during this COVID-19 thing?
Well, aside from the boredom and the lack of income, I've been doing okay.
Excuse me. Those are the tricky parts we've all been trying to overcome. But you don't seem any worse for the wear.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as my rehearsal for retirement. I'm not ready to retire, but at least I'm getting some rehearsal time.
I have this thing with this theory that retirement is not good for the male soul. It kind of puts a dot on we need a way to drive ourselves forward and feel our sense of purpose, and I think you take that away from us, and it kind of takes the steam right out of the engine pretty quick.
As long as the ears and the knees work, I'm going to be doing sound somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a tremendous loss to the industry to not have you. I mean, you're amazing at what you do, and I'm glad to hear that from you. That's really good news. And I think we're kind of on an upward tick towards getting back in the game. I think here. I mean, I don't want to get out in front of it too soon, but it feels like that's what's happening. Yeah. So let's hope that's how it goes. Here at the show, we're interested in the origin story. I mentioned you've been in the game for a long time. What drove you to come to the game? How did you get into it?
Well, I was an AV nerd in school. I was the guy with the threading the Bell and Howell 16 millimeter and the Wallensack reel-to-reels. And I was doing this when I was in the 4th grade.
Wow, that's impressive.
And by the time I was in high school, I was running the sound system in the auditorium, which sounds impressive, but we're talking a 3-input Bogan.
It's a very different from today.
Very different kind of thing.
Yeah.
Side of stage mixing was my good experience for later on.
Sure.
And I was going to become a librarian, and somehow I got sidetracked. I was home for the summer, and a band I had done some work for when I was in high school said, "Hey, we're going to go out to Kansas and Nebraska. You want to get in the van?" And I got in the van.
Never looked back.
Never really got out of the van one way, at least not figuratively.
Gotcha. That's a great story. Yeah, we all kind of started. A lot of us from our era started in a similar way, almost by accident. There was a love for the gear and the sound, and we were trying to understand it. In the early days, there wasn't a lot of direction from outside the outside
There
world.
were no schools. There were no magazines.
No,
there were
no.
no.
You
You just went out and did it and made major mistakes and hoped nobody noticed.
Yeah. Well, and there was we talked about this. There was an ability to kind of hide mistakes a little easier back in the day too. It's not so much of a thing nowadays. Your stuff can be kind of on blast now.
Whereas
You're not getting it
audiences were a little less. Hey, I can hear the vocals. I can see the band.
Right. And that was a happy audience for the most part. Yeah, you're not wrong. You worked at to me, it's a fascinating, amazing, the Avalon Ballroom, the history of that place. Talk to us about the Avalon Ballroom days.
Well, first I worked at the Family Dog in Denver.
Oh, no shit.
Family Dog Productions opened a branch in Denver in 1967. And I did not work there at the beginning. I was working for another club, in Denver. And one day, I was still kind of doing the librarian thing. I hadn't completely committed to this. So I was working for an underground weekly newspaper. And part of the gig was I would go to the Family Dog every week and get the flyers, and they'd stuff them in the newspapers. Well, one day I show up at the Family Dog to get the flyers, and their publicist looks at me and says, "You do sound, don't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What are you doing this weekend?" Well, it turns out that the guy who'd been the sound man for the Family Dog had left town on a buying trip. Let's put it that way. It was because it was illegal then, and he hadn't come back.
No shit.
So I got thrown in. Side of stage, that venue is mixed side of stage, and trying to remember, my first show was either The Birds or Lothar and the Hand People.
My goodness. Wow. It's pretty amazing first shows.
Well, the band, the most popular band at this other place I was working was called the American Standard.
I don't think I've heard of
And they never recorded or were famous under that name, but you've heard of the guitar player.
Which is?
No, he was a 17 or 18-year-old runaway from Sioux City, Iowa, named Tommy Bolin.
Oh, no shit. Wow. That's impressive.
Yep.
Yeah.
And by the time he was 19, he had basically absorbed the entire Jimi Hendrix
Yeah, he's a monster.
ethos.
He was a monster.
Yeah.
He's a serious badass. I mentioned in the intro, it's just a fascinating subject. Let's be honest. your time. So let's talk about Altamont for a second. We don't really have a choice. I mean,
No.
it's, not a lot of people can make a claim that they worked the Altamont show on the sound side of things. Can you talk to us about how that unfolded?
Well,
I'm not sure everybody here understands what Altamont is.
well, at the end of their tour, the Rolling Stones wanted to make a movie. They wanted to do a big free concert because they weren't at Woodstock. And they wanted to do this, first off, for the ego boost. And secondly, apparently, because of taxes or whatever, they were broke.
Well, yeah, Britain will tax every dime
Yeah.
you got.
So, and they hadn't yet figured out, moved to France for tax purposes, or
Exactly.
Switzerland, whatever it was.
I think they went to France, yeah.
Yeah, and so what happened is the people with the Grateful Dead said, we can arrange this, and it'll be a surprise. You'll be the special surprise guest on a Grateful Dead Jefferson Airplane show in Golden Gate Park. Well, the city wasn't having it.
No.
So the next venue offer, Sears Point, which is the sports car, stock car track up in Sonoma County. And they had porta potties, they had security, they had infrastructure. And so they wanted to, remember, it's the 60s. We all just want to pitch in and do a beautiful thing. And Sears Point, they actually started building the stage, started getting everything together, a proper festival stage with a moat and a wall.
Gotcha.
And Sears Point then found out that the Rolling Stones were making a movie.
Uh-oh.
And the owners of Sears Point at that time was Filmways Corporation. So this original, okay, we'll let you use the property if you pay for security and insurance, but we won't charge you rent or,
Yeah.
That went away. So immediately, lawyers, agents are on the phone, and they're tearing down the stage at Sears Point. We don't know where we're going. 36 hours before Downbeat, they cut the deal with Altamont Speedway, which was a little-used stock car racing track on Altamont Pass, straight up 580 here.
That's right.
Between here and Tracy.
Still there.
Oh, yeah, and the Tour of Le Mans.
That's right.
And so at this point, the other thing is the Stones were not touring with a big enough sound system to do an outdoor gig. So some gear from McEwen Sound, some gear from Swanson Sound, I think, I'm not sure, but definitely McEwen, Corcoran, Bob Cohen Sound, Lumiere Productions, who had the sound equipment in the Avalon Ballroom, later the Family Dog on the Great Highway. We all met up at Altamont Pass late in the afternoon. We worked all night kludging together a sound system. And this is mostly Altec Voice of the Theater cabinets, big Altec multi-cell horns,
Yeah.
but coming from 3 or 4 different sources. Not everybody's cabinets were wired the same polarity. So as the sun's coming up, and you can see this very briefly in the movie, hanging on the outside of a scaffold, on one scaffold is me, and the other scaffold is a guy named Dave Schultz, and we're holding the receiver of a phase checker. And somebody's standing on the deck going click, and if the green light comes on, the cone's moving forward. If the red light goes on, the cone's moving backwards. And if the cone's moving backwards, these Altec Voice of the Theaters, you take the back off the cabinet and you reverse the wire to the connector.
Wow.
Because also in those days, there's no NL4s in those days, no
of course
EP4s.
not.
Some companies had Hubbles. Some companies were using XLRs for speaker connectors. Some people were still using screw terminals.
That's right.
And then hanging on the inside of the scaffolding on each side was this system that the Grateful Dead were experimenting with. It was a large curved array, came in 3 sections. The top curve had, I believe, 8 D130s in it.
Wow.
The bottom curve had 8 D130s in it. And then right in the middle was the JBL's golden slant plate lens. And this was their attempt to do a line array, circa 1969.
Yeah.
And
Level
then
ahead of the curve.
And then the Grateful Dead at that time were still playing places the size of the Family Dog on the Great Highway occasionally. And Bear had built this system that consisted of 8 Sun double 15 bottoms and some slant plate lenses powered by Macintosh 3500 boat anchors and Ampex mixers and the first third octave equalizer I ever saw. It was an Altec Acoustivoice set. Each filter was its own module with a rotary pot. Oh yeah, it was.
Wow.
But they used those speakers at Altamont for stage monitors.
Incredible.
So if you look at the film, you're seeing the sun bottom get kicked around when all the chaos is going on stage.
Right.
That was the monitor.
So you were there when when the band was playing, and an altercation jumped off in the front.
There were multiple altercations.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, during the day.
Well, let's give a little preface. So the Stones, in a pinch, hired the Hells Angels, or at least gave them permission to run security for this show. Because
the Hells Angels had done security for the memorial concert for Brian Jones they'd done in Hyde Park.
Yeah.
What they didn't realize is that the English Hells Angels were choir boys compared to the San Francisco and Oakland chapters.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very different animal.
Very different animal. And we didn't have time to build a proper stage.
No.
The stage was no higher than this road case.
Yeah.
At the bottom of a bowl.
Yeah.
No bicycle rack fencing.
No.
Nothing.
There was a line of men, more or less.
Yeah, well, they came in later. But at one point, when the Jefferson Airplane's on stage, Marty Ballin sees Hell's Angel in some altercation with someone in the audience.
Sure.
And Marty got macho and jumped off the stage and tried to break up the fight and got punched in the
juts. Clever.
And the always diplomatic other guitarist in the band said, "Hey, some Hell's Angel just punched my lead singer, and I don't think that's very cool," which of course made the Hells Angels very pleased. So, and it got worse. And of course, it gets cold out on that pass at
yes, it
night.
Does.
And the Stones did not want to go on until the sun was completely down. So there was like a 2.5, the Grateful Dead never played.
Wow.
The Grateful Dead decided, bad mojo, we're not going to play.
Yeah.
So, Santana played, the Jefferson Airplane played, the Flying Burrito Brothers played, and then darkness, 3 hours. And they come out, and the chaos started almost in the middle of the first tune.
Yeah, it got, I'm not sure if you haven't seen it, you should look out, check this out. It's an extraordinary moment in rock and roll where, in effect, basically an African-American gentleman and all dressed up in a
green
suit made a move. There was some altercation with some women, and he stepped into the fray. I believe he was associated with these women, and he went to draw a gun. And it's very clear in the film. You can see this for yourself. And he went in his waistband to pull a gun out, and they reacted. They
took him out.
They killed him because they were. It was a real moment of true self-defense because he was going to shoot him, and they weren't going to have that. And to their credit, in some ways, and it was a very controversial moment, but. If somebody was pulling a gun out on you, you would either get shot or do something before that happens, and that's what they did. And so he ended up being stabbed to death. And it's a critical moment, and it was for many people that put on shows and study this is the exact what not to do when you bring some big bands together in an impromptu free concert in that environment of that time. It was just exactly what not to do, and you were having to be there, and it's just an incredible thing.
Well, I was on the stage left speaker scaffold, third level.
Wow. That's so crazy. Let's move on from that. But it's just fascinating.
But just strapping together, multiple sound systems. And here's the amazing thing before we leave.
Sure.
I have found in the years since, talking to people who were there, the further you were from the stage, the better a time you had. There were people a half mile up the hill who had just a marvelous time.
Well, it's good to hear that it wasn't bad for everybody.
Well, who had the worst time after the show.
Well, you know, this was the history of old school rock and roll gigs. Is the first 8? It's not like it is now. The first 8 rows usually got mowed down and the worst of the sound. And you know, and this was a process. We were still figuring out how to throw
How
live
to put
shows.
the sound word. Yeah.
And plus the nature of the geography of that place. If you understand it at all, you know, it's right near my bro's house, so I see it all the time when I visit. And it's just an unlikely spot to throw a successful event.
It's not a pleasant part of piece of real estate.
No.
But after the gig, it was cold, and a lot of people couldn't get out because their cars were stuck in the mud, or they couldn't.
I believe that. Yeah.
And it was cold, and all the speakers and the follow spots were all lifted with a crane. Crane driver freaked out and split with the keys to the crane.
Oh, man.
So he came back the next day, but the night after the concert, all of the road cases for Chipmunk's Super Troopers were smashed and burned as firewood.
Yeah, see, that's just not surprising. Now, here's a scene. You can see the picture here
of
the aftermath of the show. And it really shows in really detail when you bring, what was the guesstimated amount of people?
300,000.
Like, you put in 300,000 people into a natural bowl space. I mean, it's just really, it's exactly what not to do when you're putting on, when you're throwing a show. And a lot of lessons were learned, luckily, from that.
Oh, yeah.
And we, you know, refined the process of putting on live shows for large audiences as a result. And the same with Woodstock, which is right in that same generation.
Woodstock got lucky.
Yeah, they really did. They really did. And the crowd was, I don't know, I think there was something about the crowd that was a little more, so, you know, the way they embraced the mud. And
and by the time Altamont happened,
Yeah.
well, Altamont was just a one-nighter, too.
Yes.
So people didn't have time to bond. And to be frank, the kind of drugs people were taking was changing.
That's right.
People were, a lot more meth, a lot more, you know, downs. Yeah, so it was a different vibe.
Yeah, it was. Well, you know, we're transferring, or there was kind of this weird going from the 60s, and it was kind of closing out, and the 70s were being joined quickly.
Yeah.
And like you said, there was a kind of a harder edge to that, and I think the things that people were putting in their bodies, their sensibilities were changing. Vietnam was on full blast. People were angry, and then you bring, you know, some folks in that aren't going to be messed with. It was just a kind of a powder keg. It was. I think it had no choice but to blow up.
In some ways, we were lucky not more people got hurt.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, really. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. All right, moving on. Thank you for sharing your experience with that, because it's fascinating to me. And, you know, just a little bit before my time. So, but you know, I've studied it in detail, and it's an absolutely fascinating thing. I know you worked at another, really, you know, a place that's still up to this day that has put on some of the best shows in the rock and roll game, is the Fillmore. You spent some time at the Fillmore.
No, I did not work at the Fillmore except with bands. I worked for Bill Graham. I worked for Bill Graham, had an empire for a while when he was at the Fillmore West.
Yes, he did.
They had the Millard Booking Agency, Fillmore Records, and Bill Graham Management. And with shifting personnel, because in California anyway, you can't be someone's agent and manager.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
So
that was restricted.
So there were different staffs.
Sure.
So I was actually hired to work for one of the bands he managed. I eventually wound up working for several of the bands he managed at the time, but the first one was a folk rock band called Lamb.
Lamb, yeah.
And, you know, the veteran, you know, the graduates of that band went on to play with Van Morrison, Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, they all did pretty well. Barbara, the lead singer, had a pretty tragic life, though.
That's sad.
Yeah.
What was it like working with the great Bill Graham? You can be honest. It's long
I
enough now.
liked Bill, and Bill liked me, which was very lucky.
Yeah.
Well, Lamb, because we were managed by Bill Graham, we got thrown onto some fairly inappropriate shows. For example, I don't know whose idea it was, but we opened at the Fabulous Forum in Inglewood for Humble Pie.
Wow.
And we're like
Lamb and humble pie?
Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting combination.
And we get there and, you know, rented backline. We're just flying down, renting a station wagon. We go there, you know, with the guitars. And Steve we're not supposed to dump on bands. The singer of the band, the front man for Humble Pie doesn't show up for sound check. and they're not going to let us have the stage until he does. So at 20 minutes before doors, they give me the stage.
Really?
And I set up the stage, and I really haven't even started a sound check, and it's doors. And Bill comes up and he says, "Lee, what's going on? What's something wrong?" I said, "Well, we didn't get a sound check. Can I have 10 minutes?" And he looks at me and says, "You got 10 minutes and not 1 second more."
Yeah.
And I did. Yep.
Well, it's a thing. Every so often, you got to sound check right into doors.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and,
happened.
And I asked for 10 minutes. I got 10 minutes.
Yeah, see,
good. The thing with Bill and all of his stage managers, if you were the support, they didn't care what time you started, but you were coming off on time.
Oh yeah, that was kind of a cardinal rule, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the other Lamb, not as inappropriate musically, we opened for Neil Young at the Oakland Coliseum.
I could see that working a little
That
better.
worked a lot better.
Yeah.
But Linda Ronstadt was supposed to open the show, and she got laryngitis. So I get a phone call at home at 10 a.m., and it, unmistakable voice, it's Bill Graham.
Yeah.
It's like, "Lee, can you have Lamb's equipment to the Oakland Coliseum? How soon?" I said, "Well, Bill, it's at the rehearsal studio in Marin. I could call the drummer and So the drummer and I go to the rehearsal studio in Marin with his Buick station wagon, because all of Lamb's backline will fit in a Buick station wagon.
Snugly into the station.
Yeah, snugly, but it all fits.
Yeah, but remind people that station wagons back in the day were friggin' massive.
Well, this was a Buick station wagon. It was probably 200 inches long, 225 inches long.
Yeah, serious car, a lot of car. Yeah,
you put a lot of drums, combo amps. I think our bass amp was like an acoustic 160. It's like everything fit. The only thing they had to provide was the grand piano, and Jack Nietzsche was playing with Neil, so there was a grand piano.
Perfect.
So we pull in about 2 p.m. into the loading dock of the Oakland Coliseum, and this is before cell phones or much of anything. We pull in semi, red Buick station wagon down to the dock. And the guys at the dock just don't believe we're the opening band.
Yeah.
They think we're trying to scam our way into this show.
Right.
And so
that's funny.
Without a cell phone, so I leave David in the dock and I walk around to the box office, hoping that I can find someone from BGP that knows me. Say, "Can you call the dock?"
Yeah, tell them we're actually supposed to be there doing what we're doing.
Yeah, we killed. I mean, we really did. We got a great response. However, there are some people, because it was kind of a folk rock band with a girl lead singer, there's some people thought she was Linda Ronstadt.
Well, this is early. You're speaking about early in Linda Ronstadt's career, because to me, I was never a huge fan in real time of her, but I understood that she was an incredible talent. Her voice, Linda Ronstadt was an extraordinary talent in the 70s. She really owned that decade. Her, Carly Simon, they were just extraordinary. So I could see how they could kind of mix it up.
Barbara was definitely Texas. And
this is pre-visual, too.
Well, that's it.
People didn't have visuals of the bands.
Yeah, you saw pictures of Linda Ronstadt, and it's the Oakland Coliseum. There's no IMAG.
No way. Yeah.
So, there's girl with shortish hair singing. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about a common problem in our business. Me and you kind of yammered about this a little bit yesterday, but it's convincing their parents that this is a real career. How did you?
Yes.
I relayed to you my brother, me and my brother's story on this with my papa, and who's still with us to this day and love him dearly. But it took a little convincing that this was an actual real career. How did you do it with your papa?
My dad was a small independent pharmacist. He ran, as he put it, a succession of failing small drugstores. And after he'd retired, I was doing a gig in Denver. So I flew in a day early so I could spend some time with my dad, and rented a car, and I took him to the venue for load-in. And he hung all the way through load-out. And he's there, and he's eating with the crew, and he's like, sees, stage go up, speakers go up, lights focus, sound check, dinner, show, everything goes down. And then about, 1 a.m., I'm slapping the truck on the back and waving to the driver. We get in the car, and about halfway home, he turns to me and says, "You guys are like bull riders." Because one of the things my dad used to do is he was
bull riders?
Bull riders.
Yeah.
Because my dad was an EMT at the local rodeos.
An emergency medical technician.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Because he was also the MT for the volunteer fire department. We're
Gotcha.
talking semi-rural Colorado at that time.
Sure.
And my dad always maintained that a bull rider is a cowboy that's too lazy to do a regular job and too dumb to realize that what they're doing is harder work. And
he said that's what he thought we were.
and that's the point where my dad realized that what I did was a real job.
I love it. Isn't
That's
great?
amazing.
Isn't that a great line? I love that. That's so perfect. I had a very similar thing with my father, and it took him a minute to understand. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've figured out the smarter way through this, but it is a legit gig, and you do work hard. Talk to us about. I know you did some guest mixing with Van Morrison, the great Van Morrison. We've dealt with Van on many issues, and depending on when you caught him in his career, he could be a very different person. Because
He could be a very different person in the
decades.
space of a week.
Yeah. What was your experience like with Van?
Well, let's see. Well, he played at the Great American Music Hall, where I was the house guy for a long time.
No shit, house guy, huh?
Well, yeah, I was the house guy at the Great American Music Hall for a long time. But Van, when he was living in Marin, would periodically look at the newspaper, the San Francisco Chronicle pink section, and he'd see an open Wednesday or Thursday the following week. He would call the owner and say, "Hello, Tom, it's Van. I feel like doing a gig." And they'd say, "Okay, Van, same deal as before." Yeah. And so they'd call the Chronicle immediately, get his name in because it only took one Sunday newspaper ad.
Yeah.
Van Morrison could sell out 2 shows a night,
Absolutely.
2 nights in a row at the club. But here's the best part. After they'd agreed on the deal and the dates, before he'd hang up, Van would say, "Tom, can you call my band?"
Get them on board.
Well, because at that time, Van had his Marin County-based band on retainer.
Oh, no kidding.
And, if he called him on, I think it was 2 weeks' notice, they had to drop whatever else they were doing and do the gig.
Yeah.
But he kept him on retainer, so it was a worthwhile thing for them.
Well, Van was not a stupid man when it comes to the business side of show business. He understood that, but he also worked off of a whim, and if he got a hair, he wanted to. If he got an itch, he wanted to scratch it. And I know this about him. At the same time, he could be challenging. And
One time he decided he was paying the band too much money, so he cut it down to a 4-piece. He did a couple of gigs and realized, well, that didn't work.
Yeah. So now I know where that money's going.
Yeah.
Exactly. Paulie Montero, a dear friend of our show, he was here. Was he here last night?
Sure was.
He was here, sitting right in this position, right here, was a drum riser, and he was playing drums for his band, My Heavy Memory. But you probably know him from SIR, Studio Instrument Rental. He asked me to ask you, what was your favorite show you've done at the Great American Music Hall?
My favorite show was not a rock show. It was jazz violinist Stefan Grappelli.
What made that special for you?
What made that special is Stefan Grappelli recorded with the gypsy jazz guitarist Django Reinhardt in the 20s and 30s. It was they were the co-leaders of the band.
Django Reinhardt.
And Django had passed away.
Yeah.
And Stefan was living in London, making a living playing, I kid you not, cocktail piano in the London Hilton.
Oh, shit.
And this crazy English guitarist who loved Django's music, named Diz Disley,
What a name.
talked Stefan into coming back out and playing that music again. So in 1975 or 76, the Great American Music Hall booked him, and there were people in that audience that had been listening to those records since the 40s.
Yeah, 3 decades.
And they
2 decades.
never thought they'd actually see him live. And at that time, he's like a 60-something-year-old Frenchman, and he's just shredding.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, he's just, it's like a juggler. He's throwing melodies up in the air and catching them.
Wow.
But just the emotion in the audience and how just amazing he was.
Yeah, it sounds very special.
But, and then that would be my favorite. Now, some of my most memorables were the ones that weren't very pleasant. We're not going to go there.
We've all had very pleasant shows. That is part of the game.
The first and only time Journey played there was in the early days of the club.
Sure.
And they brought their
Steve Perry.
Huh?
This pre-Steve Perry.
Yeah, definitely. This is when Ainsley Dunbar was still in the band, and
Sure.
Ross Valerie was doing most of the vocal.
Neil had just come out of Santana, I guess.
Right, and they had the smaller version of Santana's band-owned
Basically,
PA.
right?
No,
Yeah.
band-owned PA.
Yeah.
It was designed by Charlie Button. And this was the Great American Music Hall before they put in the system that Bernie Broderick helped us design. The whole building was wired 100 amps single phase. Yeah, the electrical wire.
Can you say fire trap?
The electrical wiring was put in 1934.
Wow.
And we're trying to run sound and lights both on that.
Not easy.
So Journey comes in and the breakers just start blowing. So Charlie Button spent the entire night in the breaker room just turning the PA back on every time it would blow the breakers.
That's awesome. That is so funny.
But you know, Alan Price played a gig at the music hall in the early days.
Okay.
And that's when he was working off that movie, Oh Lucky Man.
Right.
That was a great gig.
That must have been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He's truly a legend.
Some of Van's best gigs ever were at the music hall.
No, I do know that actually. The history of his performances there
'Cause he
is
wanted
kinda
to be
legendary.
there.
Yeah, that's a big thing for him.
Yep.
Yeah, he really does need to feel the show, or he's going to turn in he's going to just go for the paycheck, and you're going to feel it.
Well, here's the Lamb connection. He hired Lamb's piano player and guitar player to be in his band.
No shit.
But
That must have been something.
it was so. What we wound up doing is Lamb opened a Northwest tour for him. And one night in Seattle, in the middle of Into the Mystic, while the sax solo's going on, Van exits stage left. The sax player keeps playing. No Van, no Van.
Wow.
Finally, the tour manager comes up. Van had just decided he wasn't feeling it, and he
Just
went
checked
out.
out.
He went out the fire door, hailed a cab, and went back to the hotel. Next day, he did a good show musically, but he did the whole show in Salem, Oregon, sitting in a straight back chair, with a guitar, channeling John Lee Hooker. You know,
Wow.
basically.
Oh, I would have loved to see that.
And then the night after that, in Vancouver, he was doing Jackie Wilson,
Really?
the kicks, it was like he was you've seen The Last Waltz.
Oh, yeah.
The way he comes out in The Last Waltz.
Yeah, yeah.
He did the whole night like that.
My
And that's
God.
3 consecutive nights.
No shit.
Yeah.
God, the stories you have, my brother. See, the early history of rock and roll is absolutely fascinating to me because this is the foundational period where, whatever it is that we do today, and when we get it right, it kind of came through these channels in these ways.
Well, we figured out a whole lot of things that didn't work,
Yeah, sure.
and we figured out how to make things go together quickly, come apart quickly.
Right.
Because, you couldn't just be at the end of the night unscrewing the speaker terminals. You had to.
Yeah, that was very labor intensive. You mentioned a minute ago, interestingly enough, it just popped up in the cards next, that you have an association with our dear, dear friend, Bernie Broderick, who's about 12 feet away. You over there, Bernie?
I hear him.
Rebuilding engines.
He's right over there building something right now.
Well, when the Great American Music Hall finally got an adequate amount of power and did the first serious upgrade to their sound system in 14 years,
Yeah.
Bernie was working for L Acoustics, and Bernie and Miguel from Dolby came in because the Great American Music Hall has a balcony around 3 sides
That's right.
and a really tall fascia on the back wall facing the stage. So with just a line array, you couldn't get the sound into those balconies
Yeah.
without
Very challenging.
bouncing it off the fascia. We didn't have 5-degree vertical
Yeah.
boxes to
That's
play
right.
with. So Bernie put together a system with speakers in the balcony on the side walls for the side balconies, and then delays back there. And Bernie came in, and we spent I think it was 2, maybe 3 days timing it, tweaking it.
Sure. So he did good for you.
He did great. That system still sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. That's really true. And yeah, that's just what the guy does. He's a speaker legend and a designer and a god, and we're really lucky to be associated with him. And it's not surprising that you guys have this history to me. Talk to us about mixing with David Crosby. See, it sounds to me like you've had some.
It was a short. It was a short, sweet tenure. But
Dave, another guy, extraordinarily talented guy, but depending where you caught him in his career,
this was.
he
I
could be
would say
challenging.
he was very low. It was a very low part in his life and his career.
Yes, sir.
And he was, forgetting the words to his own songs. And
He was messing with the periodic table pretty heavily
yes,
right there. And
well put.
Yeah.
I mean, we would do these. He has all these priceless acoustic guitars, and each one of them has a pickup
Yeah.
and an internal mic. So there's 2 jacks external on the guitar because he's not going to drill holes in those guitars.
right.
And we do these long sound checks on each guitar, and then he'd come out for the show and he'd plug the wrong jack into the wrong plug, so the mic output was and it's like,
Oh, man.
And of course, this was before. Now you could just
That's
do
right.
a hot patch
Exactly.
on the.
Just
But
flip it on the board.
couldn't do it then.
No,
so
sir.
and he'd be like ripping me a new one. The guitar tech would walk out on stage and stand behind him, and go, asshole.
I think the word you just said was asshole. Yeah, when you have a career of over 50 years, of course, there's going to be peaks and valleys in that, and of course, we for guys like us that have been around for a minute, we get to see some of that, but through the different times and periods of people's lives.
Another musical gig that was a lot of fun was a benefit. It was Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe. Yes.
Took me right
there.
there.
You go.
So I'm going to stop you just for a second. Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe, to me, are 2 of the baddest asses. I friggin' love them. Nick is
Sweetheart.
Jesus Christ.
a gent.
And talent, right? I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just endless talent. I always thought of them as music for musicians.
Mm-hmm.
The general public, in some levels, got it, but it wasn't widely accepted. I think they were just too, they were just too intense. I don't know the right word for it, but extraordinarily talented. This year's model, those albums, fantastic.
Well, the Marin band Clover, after 2 relatively unsuccessful albums, the record company sent them to London to do their 3rd record.
Yeah.
And they were living like in a coal water flat and not getting any money.
Sure.
And they couldn't legally work because they didn't have, work permits. And Nick put them together to play on Elvis's demo.
Yeah,
So they were on Elvis's first album.
amazing.
But so this was a benefit for Austin DeLone's son. Austin's great piano player from Texas, lives in Marin, and his son has a genetic disorder called Prader-Willi syndrome,
Wow.
which basically the part of your brain that tells you you've eaten enough, you're not hungry anymore, doesn't work.
Wow.
So if you have this, you will literally keep eating.
Nuts.
24. Yeah, so fairly high maintenance. So Austin's friends, have always come together. Well, this year, Nick and Elvis were both coming out to play Hardly Strictly. So the week before, they did this show at the Music Hall, and it was basically Elvis sings Nick, Nick sings Elvis.
Oh, that's
they did
very
cool. Did each other's tunes.
That's very cool. Wow, that must have been a very special thing. And you're speaking about the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival, which is a massive festival.
Oh, yeah.
It's a free concert we held in the Golden Gate Park 3-4
3
days a
days.
year, and it's just
Yeah.
everybody plays. I mean,
Everybody plays there, and I've never worked it because
what? How's that?
the reason for that is when the Slims production office ran Hardly Strictly Bluegrass for the first 20 years, or whatever it is, and myself and Ted Hatsushi had to make sure that while everyone else is out playing in the park, sound techs, that Ted and I keep the music hall and Slim staffed.
That makes sense. I was thinking about bringing Ted on the show. What do you think? Is that a good play?
I think so, yeah.
Ted's a sweetheart. I'd like very much to have him here. I'm going
You
to reach
started out
to
as a
him.
punk rocker.
Huh?
You started out doing sound for punk bands.
See,
He can tell you about the
me and
Fab
him are going
Mab.
to have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
That's where I started as
Yeah,
well.
he survived. He survived the Fab Mab and then hooked up with a Motown cover band, and that's where I met him.
Wow.
He came into the Great American Music Hall with the Zazu Pitts Memorial Orchestra.
I remember
Who were
Zazu Pitts very
they were
well.
very hot for a while. They could sell out 3 nights in a row at
Zazu
the
Pitts
music hall.
put on a hell of a show.
Oh yeah,
Oh my goodness.
and Ted was their front of house guy, and I'll tell you how much I liked Ted. I got along with Ted right away. I think by the 3rd Zazu gig, I gave him his own keys to the mic locker.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow, that's trust right there.
Well, and we're still like that.
Oh,
It's
that's
like
very sweet.
he's had my back for a long time.
I'm gonna reach out to Ted and see if he'll come in. At the we're booked up till the end of April, but I would love to have him in here. He's just
He's living out in the family place in Pleasanton, so he's not too far away.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, we have our little Facebook relationship, but I'd love to have him bring him in here and dig around in his history there, especially the Fab Mab. You know, the Mabuhay Gardens saw so many extraordinary acts in a really seminal part of music history, and I think you could speak to that. And it's a little area that I don't think gets enough of attention because it was a little bit quick.
And it was combat audio.
Oh boy,
It was
yeah. Some
combat
of those shows really. I mean, it was talk about off the chain. I mean, shit would get sideways real quick.
David Bromberg used to play the Great American Music Hall a lot, and the music hall, he had a big band, so we didn't have enough monitors to do David Band, so we would usually, rent monitors, and our 2 regular sources were all booked up that day, so we rented a monitor rig from FM Productions.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got David Bromberg, and those same monitors had been the night before at Winterland with the Sex Pistols.
Wasn't that the Sex Pistols' last show?
It was indeed.
Yes.
And when we cracked open those cases,
Oh my God.
spit, snot.
You're hoping that's what that was.
Well, whatever it was, it was
Could
rank.
have been anything.
The odor from those road cases was rank.
That show is a classic. I mean, that show kind of is a legendary show. And Sid was in a full downhill slide.
yeah.
He was on a fast track to the end of his days.
Yep.
And there wasn't too much. And of course, Johnny Rotten, Johnny Lydon at the time was just a friggin' hell on wheels. He was just a terror.
Yep.
And they really it makes sense that was their last show. They were kind of imploding at
What
that
could
point.
they do? Yeah.
And everything was kind of like the Howard Stern of music at the time. They were just trying to freak people out. And the audience was more than willing to go along for the ride. And they were spitting and chucking fluids of all sorts. And it's an absolutely legendary thing that ended up being the last Sex Pistols show. So that's interesting. You had the monitor rig the very next day.
Use those wedges the next day, and it was
man.
odiferous.
That sounds rough. That sounds really rough. Tell us about your time with the legendary. I mean, this guy is truly a legend, the great Ry Cooder.
My relationship with Ry, I never worked directly for Ry, but from the Avalon Ballroom to the Family Dog to Fillmore West,
He made the rounds, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I did, with the exception of the last one, the last time he played the Great American Music Hall, I worked every Ry Cooder San Francisco show for 20 years. Of course, bear in mind, sometimes that's 1 this year, 2 years off.
Right.
And the best one was the last live record he did there. He's done 2 live records at the Music Hall. This one, he had a full-on banda. And they wouldn't all fit on stage, and nobody wanted to stand in front of the trumpets.
Oh, my God, no.
So we put the trumpets in the balcony above stage right,
Very clever.
and the trombone and alto horn and stuff were in the balcony above, stage left, and Flaco Jimenez and Ry and everybody on stage. Else was on stage, and when the banda started playing, nobody knew where the sound was coming from.
Ghost in the Machine.
Yeah, it's like, but it's just, I think we kind of, I wouldn't say we hit it off. We just knocked heads the first time in about 1968. And from then on, he sees me. He knows he's going to be taken care of.
Yeah, it's like an old friend. Yeah.
And I don't ask him too much. He hates people who want to talk to him.
Well, I think he struggles with dumb questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
he
will
does
not.
not suffer
He doesn't
fools.
suffer fools. He will get in your shit quick.
Well, the one, not that one, but the one that he played with the Little River Band, was a Little Village Band, minus John Hyatt. It was Nick Lowe and Jim Keltner.
Man, what a line.
Yeah, and his regular guitar tech couldn't make it, so I had to find him a guitar tech, and I knew I had to find someone that wasn't going to ask him a whole lot of questions about the guitars, but he really could.
Yeah, could do the job.
Could do the job, but
kind of
not
quietly.
Yeah.
And so that all worked out.
That all worked.
Good.
Well, the other thing about being in the business long enough is it's like casting a movie when you hire a crew.
Absolutely.
You know,
Well, getting the chemistry right is critically
Yeah.
important. You're making cookies. You put too much salt in that chocolate chip cookie, it's going to be an awful cookie. So
Yep.
no, there's no two ways about it. That's we do that here. That's something that's really critical to making things work well. Is putting the right people with the right other people for the right job.
Yeah.
And so the artist comes into that understanding of certain personality types and the energy level you bring to a thing is critically important. I think you're a student of that and understand
Oh yeah.
that very well.
Well, at the time of the shutdown, with both Slims and the Great American Music Hall operating, I had like a call list of like 14 or 15 sound techs. And, based on availability,
Sure.
okay, these guys are good for, I shouldn't put this person on a hip hop show, but this person would love it,
Yeah,
so
right.
I had that luxury of,
It's a very nice luxury to be afforded. Yeah, no two ways about it. Last time I took my gal over to see the Fix right before the hall closed, right before Slim's closed.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those mortgage tours. They were out getting that money, and Pike Barber was behind the board, and so we hung out with Pike. But it's sad to see that Slim's went away because it was a guaranteed place to see a good show, and you could always get to see your bands on the way up and bands on the way down. And it was a kind of a sweet spot for that.
That's the mid-sized club reality.
Yeah. And Slim's never let you down that way. You could pretty much, and another thing. I miss the pink section. I really do. I still love the pink section.
Yeah,
would get
it's
the
still
Sunday
there, but it
paper.
used to be
You
literally.
just tear it apart to get to the pink section and then thumb through that and see what's going
If
on
you
for
could,
the month.
if you could get a feature story on your baby band, or new jazz act, or a feature in the pink section, that would by itself would be worth half a house.
Oh, easy. Oh, yeah, no. That was a kind of a Bible in its own right.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a way to really bring people together from pretty much about 100 miles outside the city in a big, large circle. And you could really do.
Well, of course, there were
great
fewer
stuff.
credible venues out in the burbs then
That's right.
too.
That's right. Yeah, it was really strange when that went away because I thought that was a big part of the whole Sunday Chronicle experience.
Oh, the whole Sunday Chronicle experience was incredible. People who grew up after newspapers don't understand.
No, they can't understand. Something about folding that page back and that ink on your fingers.
I would take, when I was working the Family Dog at the Great Highway, I didn't own a car. So I would be taking the 38 Geary bus from Ocean Beach down to where the pad was.
Sure.
And I'd get off and change buses at Geary and Van Ness, and there was a Foster's. I don't know if, it's Foster's Diner.
Yeah.
Open all night. So I'd buy, after Sunday night,
You're taking us back a ways here, buddy.
Saturday night, I'd buy my Sunday Chronicle. I'd get my Foster's English muffin.
Sounds kind of perfect, brother.
Oh yeah, and just sit there and decompress because some Saturday nights that 38 Geary buses, it made its way down the length of Geary Boulevard. It was like being in a Fellini movie. And
no doubt about it, right? I mean, really true. We used to kind of experience that at Zim's on Market. We'd kick it in Zim's, kind of corner booth it, and be just after some crazy shenanigans at the On Broadway or at the Stone, one of those. It could be the Mad Fabs during the punk rock days, and we'd sit there and have chicken soup and kind of recount the night's events and all these, it's kind of a freak show.
In
going on
Denver,
all
it was
around
the
you.
White Spot on Colfax.
Sure.
In L.A., it was the Sambos on Santa Monica.
Good old Sambos.
Yeah,
I feel bad even saying that out loud, but this was a place. It was
it was open.
Yeah,
And
it's just the name. It was such a poorly named place.
No, it was,
but now you could never have a place called Sambo's. But
there's only one left.
I didn't even know that there was.
Yeah,
really?
it's the original in Santa Barbara.
No shit. Well, I remember the Bob's Big Boy back in the day, and their Broford dressing. There was. Yeah, this is time
the
machine
Bob's Big
stuff.
Boy in Denver wouldn't let hippies in.
Yeah, Bob's had that kind of in L.A. too. It was a kind of a thing, and they didn't know what to do with us as punk rockers. We'd roll up, and we were kind of the anti-hippie, but and we had the close haircuts, but they were smart enough to stop us at the door anytime after midnight. You try to roll in after midnight, and the manager would come and try to hustle you out. But usually there was way more of us than them, so it was kind of a chase around the building situation. It was a lot of fun though. Talk to us real quick about your time out with Beach Blanket Babylon.
Oh, well, Beach Blanket Babylon.
Explain to the folks
those
what
who
that
don't know
is.
it.
Yeah.
It's this wacky satire cabaret show that started in the back room of a restaurant in North Beach and then moved to an Italian American social hall called Club Fugazzi.
Yeah.
And it ran there for 40-something years. And it was like outrageous big hats, tap dancing Christmas trees. But it's like it's a review and topical satire. You know, it's like when In Sync was hot, 3 of the male cast members would come out in a prop sync and would say In Sync and sing a number. But the theme is Snow White is looking for her prince. And she goes all around the world, and that's how they tie the things together. And the show is very popular in San Francisco.
Yes.
And then they put together not quite a touring show, they always called it a travel show, because they didn't really tour, you know, as in get on the bus and truck and do it. We would go to like Stockton and do shows, or we'd go to Visalia, or
I'm trying to imagine that show in Stockton.
and a lot of corporate shows.
Oh, see, I could see that.
Oh, the corporate shows are great because,
but like a place like Bakersfield, Fresno,
Oh, yeah.
you could really upset an audience with that show.
oh yeah, Visalia, we had to, okay, kids, PG tonight.
It's gonna get a little blue in here.
Yeah, but Kenny Maslow, the director, when we do corporate shows, he would write a special song. He would pump the client for names to drop and what the
that's
company
perfect.
did, and he would always be a custom song.
Oh, that's very clever.
And we would turn a convention center or a hotel ballroom into a theater with, drops, curtains, the whole shtick in an afternoon.
Wow, sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But a lot of fun though, right?
Oh, yeah. We opened the Performing Arts Center out there in San Ramon, which is also the high school auditorium because that's the way they do it in the
Yeah,
Burbs.
they share it.
And we were the very first thing in there.
No kidding.
And Phil Brown, our rigger, he comes down from the fly, and he comes to Larry, who's the production manager, and me, and says, Larry, look at me. Look at me. What, Phil? No, look at me. There's no dust on anything. Because normally when he'd come down from the catwalk, it'd be like
you're
furball.
Covered in dust this thick. Yeah, that's very common. And to go into a new facility like that, it must have been a little startling.
Yeah, and the other thing is now that the show's closed, I can say this. The director, we would do a full dress run through afternoon of the show every time because there was new material and different stage. And we had to make sure there was enough overhead clearance for the finale hat.
Oh, wow.
Because the finale of the show, the hat lady comes out, and the hat is like 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's the San Francisco skyline.
Yeah, it's something to see.
And then as they go into the last chorus of San Francisco, open your Golden Gate, the stage manager pushes the button for a garage door opener. And it goes up even higher. The Transamerica Pyramid goes up even higher.
Kind of telescopes it out.
Yeah, telescopes out.
Yeah.
And a little biplane flies around
so
it.
good.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
And so the stage has to be hard and level. Otherwise, the hat lady will, because no human being could support that hat.
No.
There's a space frame underneath it on casters. But the director, anyone who's done sound for rock bands knows this. He had no high end left in his hearing.
Oh, wow.
And so while he's out in the audience during the sound check, I've got the 4K spike on everything. Because if you can't understand the words, you're not going to laugh at the jokes.
That's right.
And he had to be able to understand the jokes, and, he's got that kind of hearing.
Yeah.
And I'd have to tell the producer or the event planner,
Yeah, just trust me.
what showtime is
Yeah. No, we've all had to mix for the tour manager or the band manager sometimes, and then you adjust accordingly.
And he's
for
a
the show.
wonderful guy. He's really
sure,
talented, but he just...
We've been around enough to know there's a few guys in the game right now that have some hearing deficit, and sometimes I can't mention a name right now, but there's one guy that comes right to my mind right now who's a famous, world famous band manager that will come and get in your ribs and tell you need to pump it up here and there, and how do you tell him? And he's like this tall. And you tell him, dude, it's you. It's not us. We all can hear that. It's you. But he's one of the biggest rock managers in the game. So you give him what he wants, and then you alter it when he's away. This hit exactly. Listen, I could talk to you all night. I really could. I didn't even get through half of my questions. I would like to maybe schedule something in the future. We could come back together and do a second part 2 with this.
Sure.
Because your length and breadth of experience is so.
Hey, if the internet chat isn't throwing, as Hoyt Axton used to say, anything hard or sharp at us.
No, they seem to be.
Not too bad, actually. No. Battle Dual chimed in and said, I like riding the 38 and playing Spot the Hawker.
No, he means hooker.
Yeah. I know what he means.
Pat's saying he used to ride the 38 bus and they play Spot the Hooker.
The 38 wasn't too bad that way. It's once I got further into the Tenderloin.
The Tenderloin can be.
The 38, it's like.
What do you say?
Yeah, pretty much once you get up to Eddie, that's when it started getting questionable.
But coming out, all the way in from the avenues, you'd, it's whatever bar. There was like a bluegrass bar on one corner. There was first there was a tiki bar.
Sure.
And then there was a bluegrass bar, and then there was, the Bermuda Triangle of Irish bars.
Yeah.
And so you'd get a different class of drunk, every 12 blocks.
I do remember the Polynesian phase that happened during the 70s. That was a thing. My uncle actually owned a place called the Tiki Bar down in San Diego. It was a thing. Listen, it was an absolute honor, a treat to have you here, my friend. Thank you for coming in this evening. It was an absolute pleasure.
Well, the car knows the way.
We'll do it again?
All right.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you, Lee. So Lee Brenkman, just a true legend in our game, brothers and sisters. Thank you for being here. What a great interview.
Seriously.
Listen, we're running long tonight. Thanks for being patient with us. There's sometimes, like I've said before, when the conversation's good, I'm staying in. It's just that simple. And so thanks for hanging out with us. Next week, we've got the great Jeffrey Rasmussen coming in. He's a straight-up badass. Now, I know we've been really audio-heavy. Obviously, we're audio guys. But this show is the mission of the show is to highlight the different segments, to bring in our friends in and people that we know and respect to come on the show and highlight different disciplines of our business: staging, lighting, costume, whatever it could be, right down to catering. We've had these guests. We're going to have some of these folks coming up in the near future. That's a little shout out to you, John Del Rio. He's up my ass about mixing it up a little more. But what can I say? I got a lot of audio friends. So we're going to have the Raz in next week. This is Jeffrey Rasmussen. He's a dear friend. Decades in the business. Steve Miller Band, Evanescence. I could just go on and on. He's an extraordinarily accomplished guy. We're going to talk to him next week, 7 p.m., right here on Thursday. We appreciate you coming out. I want to thank everybody for that helps make this show possible. I want to send you all love. Please keep care of yourselves and take care of each other. Be kind. This is my biggest and best advice. Be kind. Call your friends. You never know, they might need you. Until next Thursday, have a great night. Thank you for tuning in.